So, I decided I'm going to make a waistcoat inspired by one of the outfits of Anne of Green Gables, the 1985 version. This right here, I was watching a Bernadette Banner video, and she makes an 1890s waistcoat, and I'm going to use that as help, and I'm also going to use the pattern that she uses in that video from the Keystone Guide to Dressmaking. I've got the fabric here. This is what I'm using, and I'm pretty sure there's not enough for a skirt, but if there's enough for a skirt, I'm gonna make a skirt too. So yeah, let's get started on the drafting of the pattern. The pattern does not have exactly my measurements, so I'm gonna have to figure that out. I'm gonna have to make a mock-up, and then we can go from there. I guess we're gonna do that today.
So I tried to use the instructions from Keystone, but I had never done something like this before. You follow a number of steps that tells you how to pattern the waistcoat based on your measurements. And I actually ended up having to start over. In the last little stretch, I also kind of improvised because I just got to a point where I really didn't know what it was trying to tell me. But overall, I think it was really a useful tool because I didn't have to flat pattern or drape or anything. I think I'm also going to use the instructions for the walking skirt in this project. In the end, I ended up making so many changes to it that I feel like it ended up being a lot different than the original pattern. So I would say if you're going to use a pattern like this, just keep in mind that the pattern that you're starting with may need a lot of changes. It might take a few tries to get it right, but that's okay. That's the process of sewing.
Okay, so at the end there, I just kind of gave up on the pattern because it really wasn't making that much sense to me. I tried to figure it out myself, but now I've got a couple of pattern pieces and I'm going to start working on a mock-up. I haven't cut the collar yet. I'm going to figure out the collar later. Once I have it on me, I'll know better what I should do.
So the first time I was cutting out the mock-up, I made a doofus move and I completely forgot that I did not make the pattern with seam allowance. So here you can see me cutting it out without seam allowance. So I ended up recutting it out of some muslin, but I didn't film that. So if you're wondering if you end up, I don't know, just noticing it at all, that is what happened. So the first thing I did when I got the pieces cut out is that I pinned all of the darts together so that they were completely lined up when I sewed them under the sewing machine. Otherwise, it would have been super messy. In addition to forgetting seam allowance, I also forgot something very important, which is adding allowance for darts, and I completely forgot that, so it was fine when I did the mock-up, it didn't really matter, but when I did the final one, I really needed to make sure that I added that allowance for the darts. And I actually did that on later mock-ups, but for this first one, I didn't add it. And here I am just sewing up the darts and up the side seams, and then I'm going to give it a try on.
Okay, well, this definitely doesn't fit. It's a little embarrassing, but I've never really done much stuff like this before, so it's okay. It's all a learning process. I think the issues here are obviously there's about 4 inches here that need to be covered up. The arm's eye is way too small, and the collar is way too close. What I need to do is go in and add here, open up the arm's eye more, and open up the collar more. I've got a pretty good side seam. That all works fine, so back to the drawing board.
To add seam allowance, I went in and I taped a piece of paper down to the pattern. I had already cut the darts out so that I could draw those onto the muslin, and so I taped that paper down, and then I added a 1/2 inch to each side of the darts to give me what I thought was going to be enough seam allowance, but you will see I have to make another mock-up and then I finally get it. I don't know, I just did the math wrong. I'm really not very good at math, but in the end it worked out. And I just go in and I take out some of the fullness in the arm's eye because it was so tight, and I have to do it again actually, but it was better the next time.
Second time around, closer, but not there yet. I still got a little bit going on here. I think one more mock-up is gonna do the trick. And also, I did repattern it to have more space in the arm side, but then I forgot to cut it out of the pattern. So next time I will have that. I think the space on my neck, the neckline is fine. The seam allowance is just making it a little bit wonky and taut. But yeah, and I think also I need to bring up the darts just a little bit because the bust is just a little too low. Costumers, don't come for me. I am wearing an 1840 style corset, but that's because that's all I've got available to me right now. One day I will make or I will buy a late Victorian corset, but I've got an 1840s corset for now, and I think it does well enough, so.
So just quickly stitching up a new mock-up and then we'll have another try on.
Success, finally. It all fits now. I just gotta do collar. And we'll be on to cutting out the fashion fabric. Oh, I'm very excited. This looks really nice, really good. On second thoughts, I'm actually really enjoying the collarless look. There's another Anne of Green Gables costume from the 1985 version. I'll put it right here. Where yeah, it's collarless. So I think I'm gonna do that instead. I think it's quite pretty and it accents the lines of the vest. Anyway, so okay, I guess I will actually get to start cutting out fashion fabric.
So I went and I started pinning down my pattern piece, and I'm only doing one cut of the pattern at a time because after I'm done here, I'm going to actually take that pattern piece and I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to line it up with the pattern so that I can get the pattern matched up when it's all sewed together. And you can see that I actually this time did the dart allowance correctly. So I'm just lining it up really carefully and then I'm going to pin it down so that it stays in place and doesn't shift around while I'm cutting it up. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the back piece as well. I can't really get the pieces that are going to be darted to match up completely, so that's going to have to be a sacrifice I make. But the front and the back where they're lined up look really nice. Once again, now that I have got all of the pattern pieces cut out, I'm just going in and I'm pinning the darts together so that I can sew them up. So I'm just sewing up the fabric, and don't mind the lid there in the background. The sunlight was coming in way too strongly and it was hitting the metal plating on my sewing machine, and I could not see a thing I was doing, so I had to put that there.
Good news number 1. Holy crap, this is so pretty. I love it. I'm so excited to have it done. And 2, I am almost entirely certain that I have enough fabric to make a skirt to go with it. So it's gonna be such a cute combo. And I'm definitely gonna make a shirt to go underneath it, a blouse with the puff sleeves. So next step is to cut out some interfacing fabric to stiffen up the front and cut out the lining.
I didn't end up using any interfacing fabric. I just cut out some fusible interfacing because the fabric might have been just a little bit too bulky, and also I didn't want it to be shifting around. I could have like basted it down or some way, but I just decided to do fusible interfacing instead. So here I'm just cutting out the excess of the darts of the lining. It was a little too bulky to have the darts be both on the fashion fabric and the lining, and so that now I'm just ironing those out flat, and then I'm going to sew the lining to the fashion fabric.
Update time. Okay, it's coming along really nicely. I just sewed the right sides together of the lining and the fashion fabric just around this whole edge going around my neck and down, and it's nice and neat, but I have a lot of space going in like right here, and I think mostly that can be remedied if I just, this was like a curved line, so I think I'm just gonna make this a straight line, and I think that will take out some of that fullness. Also, this side I put some boning into the darts, and I think it looks nicer with the boning there. It looks a little more sleek. So I think I'm going to bone all the front darts. Not the back. The back is actually pretty nice, pretty smooth. And I actually managed to get all the back pieces lined up. So that looks really nice. I think I'm gonna stop here for tonight though, because I'm getting pretty sleepy. She's looking good. I'm excited for tomorrow.
And I just had posted this video on my story, but I wanted to show it to get a better view on how all the lines lined up. Like the back looks really nice. I'm pretty happy with it. So I ended up hand sewing the lining on the bottom of the waistcoat and around the arm size of the waistcoat down by hand with just a little whip stitch, and that really actually didn't take me too long. I just didn't want there to be any visible top stitching.
Finished hand sewing the lining to the bottom. Oh, there's a stray pin of the waistcoat. So now that's all done. I actually think that the only thing that's left is to hand sew down the armholes and to get some buttons and buttonholes on, and then we're done. So a while back I found a bunch of shell buttons, and these are all mismatched, but I found these and they're just the right amount to do on the waistcoat, so I'm going to use these. I think the mismatched kind of thing is actually kind of fun. So yeah, I'm going to start putting these on. I think they're really beautiful. So now I'm just also whip stitching the armholes down. So when I was sewing the buttonholes, I was really hasty and I didn't think about it, and I ended up doing the first buttonhole on the bottom there vertically. And so the rest of them are sewn in horizontally. And I guess, you know what, I'm gonna say it was an artistic choice. It really doesn't look that bad. It looks kind of interesting. It's just the bottom one. And then the rest are all horizontal, and I will put in a picture after this ends. But after that, I was done, and I will show you what it looked like.